is today. Happy birthday, Senator Vance. No public events for him either. President Biden is going to Delaware today. I won't say no one cares anymore, but it's not as fraud an issue when he goes to Delaware for break. Joe Biden has no public events. Doug Emhoff, tireless man, out campaigning in Sayville, New York. There is an event today, which if you look in the day book, you can see a link to it. Governor Shapiro is doing a state event at 11 o'clock, and there's a link to the live stream if you want to begin to check him out. I do believe he's going to be picked. Nothing in my reporting suggests it's going to be anybody else. I'm not 100% sure, and she could change her mind, but I believe that the process is underway to announce him. As we've talked about here, he's the only one who's getting like lots of negative opposition research, lots of negative journalistic stories, and public opposition. And the main areas of concern that people have has had a more moderate record on education than Democratic orthodoxy allows, although he's no, I would say, screaming moderate on those issues. The twin issues of his support for Israel and his personal faith. And then finally, this issue of a top aide to him leaving the office after a settlement involving accusations of sexual harassment. Those are the main things strikes against it. There's lots of upside. And I've been surprised at how little focus there's been on the upside. And I think we're going to see that again if I'm right that he'll be picked. So, guys, I want to start with this. I think that they've got a plan in place to minimize any dissenting voices within the party. I think you're going to see the Obamas come out, the Clintons come out, Nancy Pelosi, Capitol Hill leaders. You're going to see Arab Americans who they've teed up. I think you're going to see local people in Pennsylvania. I think you're going to see a flood of stuff along with this big announcement tour next week to just steamroll over any dissent. So, Sean, you first. What would you expect the reaction to be if it is Shapiro? Will it be all flowers and chocolate chip cookies, or do you think there'll be some negativity either from the Trump side or the Democrats?
Well, there has to be from the Trump side, and they'll find some reason to go after him and talk about the juxtaposition on between the two of them on issues or fracking and things like that are important in Pennsylvania. I assume that would be a big one. I just don't put a ton of stock into these things. So I think people like us will all talk about it and what it means. I think it will be talked about in the context of Pennsylvania. I don't think he's a guy that is polarizing to the extent that people are going to come out and go, oh my God, it's Josh Shapiro. You even saw some of the comments from the union folks basically saying, yeah, we'll eat it. We're going to suck it up. Yeah. And so my view is this is net, it's a good move if she picks him for Pennsylvania. I think there's going to be a lot of, if I were them, again, no advice, but there's a lot of Republicans who had kind things to say of him or not negative things during his gubernatorial run. I could expect those to get resurfaced. But again, I just don't put a ton of stock in this stuff. So
yeah. Tim, let me just say, I know you love Governor Walz. I know that there's a great profile of him in the Wall Street Journal today. But the reality is, if you can pick a wow pick, you don't have to be Donald Trump to want a wow pick. Shapiro's going to be a wow pick for a variety of reasons. I love Governor Walz nearly as much as you do. Not a wow pick, right? Go ahead, Tim.
Well, I think to Sean's point here is like, what is the bar to clear here that matters? I think number one is don't have a disastrous rollout like JD Vance and emerge with like negative 15 favorability ratings. I don't think that's even possible with someone like Josh Shapiro, but now I've said it, maybe I've willed it into the world. Second, I think Democrats will be excited by this. I mean, we've seen a shift in the Democratic electorate about what we care about. You know, do they share my values versus are they electable towards the electability question since 2016? And I don't even think there's that much of a gap between the Democratic base and where Shapiro is on things. But to be able to make the case that, look, Pennsylvania's 19 electoral votes, no matter how you carve the map, doesn't matter if you win Arizona, Michigan, and Wisconsin, unless Pennsylvania is there, or unless you're bringing in Georgia and North Carolina, you do not have a path to win. I think people are going to be very excited about that. And to Sean's point, does the VP pick bring a ton? No, but there's an argument that there are some home state effects, and if they are, even small and tiny, it might be enough to swing the state. And I think that's it. And I think that's what people.
Well, I think to your point, this all has to go back to, if I were them, the message is, doesn't matter who, with all due respect to Governor Shapiro, this is a winning ticket, right? This is what gets us Pennsylvania. This is what focus on winning. I mean, I remember that it was sort of Bush coming out of Obama. All we cared about was winning. It's like, does this get us back to the White House? Yeah. All right. I'm for it. And I think that the more that they can say this ticket gets us this, I'm not saying it does, but I'm saying that would be the message that I would focus on if I were them. This is now going to take us keep Donald Trump out of the White House. They need to focus. The Trump campaign needs to focus on issues and get people to remember what's important to them. The Harris campaign needs to focus on this is what keeps Donald Trump out of the White House.
Right. Tim, if the Biden folks called you, sorry, the Harris folks called you and said, what
do you know?
What might we be missing? Like, what could go wrong with the Shapiro rollout? What would you be worried about? Would you be worried about Arab Americans in Michigan? What would be the messaging you'd be concerned about, pushing back on?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I have a hard time with that because I do think people they'll hear him speak, they will rally. I think maybe the online conversation about who the true liberal progressive pick here is a little over torqued and is probably not going to matter in the long run. But I might advise them that could be a secondary question too, in addition to get your folks lined up, like you said, roll them out. I think the oppo on him has been pretty tempered, probably a function of the fact that it's a very short audition period time. But just see if any people are not willing to let that go.
One quick point on the oppo. This is something that I think people, I oversaw that division twice. The thing that people think is somehow because you run for another office, there's a ton of you've been vetted. That's not, he ran against Doug Mastriano. It was sort of there was no vetting period. I'm not saying there's anything on the guy. He seems whatever, but the idea that someone has, dumpster dived and gone through all the stuff, the yearbooks, whatever, is just not there. Yeah. So you just don't know. And that's the X factor, is that when people start digging, is there some quote? Is there some allegation that never got popped out during the gubernatorial race? But there is this false understanding among a lot of people in the public that because you've ascended to an office, you've been somehow vetted. Especially in that Pennsylvania Senate race, that was not going to happen.
Gubernatorial, but yeah. All right.
Sorry.
No, all good. So the convention, again, just looking down the road a little bit. The Republican convention was very well managed and very well staged, but they also had two things going for them in terms of momentum. One was that at the time they were way ahead and they were feeling confident, and so it was who's going to be in the cabinet. And the other was in the aftermath of the tragic assassination attempt, people were rallying around the nominee as almost a religious figure. It seems to me that Democrats can get the mechanics right. They go in this almost certainly as the momentum candidate, and they go into it, if I'm right about Shapiro, with an historic ticket, right? Chance to put the first woman president, first Jewish vice president. It seems to me that they'll really have to mess it up. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it is analogous to the situation that Republicans had going into their convention. She gets to pick an exciting VP. That bump will continue coming out of the convention. Trajectory continues. So I think it's mostly upside. I think if I were to worry about something, one bucket that I'm not so worried about, but is attention stealing, is Trump does something, right? So the focus is off of the convention. Our infomercial gets interrupted, which is not the worst thing in the world, but I don't want it. And the second is something happens. I think the chances of this are very low. That draws the press to frame the convention in Chicago 68. Some divisiveness is happening outside that engulfs the convention. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it is really about producing a sleek infomercial. I think Democrats are great at that. I think we're going to be fine.
Yeah, I think the key about what happens in Chicago, do college students who are not back come out, stage some massive protests, cause some disruption that turns some media attention away? And then secondly, does something take them off kilter, right? I think if you make this is an opportunity to be about Harris and Shapiro, Biden speaking on night one. If they go overboard on the Donald Trump thing, this is where, again, the attempt to sometimes go overboard is what's cost them. That was the Hillary issue, right? With the deplorables comment. Do you take it too far? And so if they can actually just stay in their lane, that would be the smart move, the safe move. And if for them, this is one where, again, throwing the long ball, the Biden campaign moved up the debate. They needed to change the game. They did. Throwing the long ball this time there's no need for it.
Right. So let's just talk about next week, right? So I'm sorry, not next week. Next week to me is going to be dominated by the rollout of the ticket, right? So that's the week of the 5th. The convention's not to the 19th. So we've got that intermediate week, and we have that because she's naming her running mate early because they're doing this virtual roll call. So just to finish up before we bring folks in, and again, see a few hands up if you want to get in the conversation, please raise your electronic hand. Love to have some new people today. What do you think the Trump folks could do during that interim week, right? That's an opportunity to do something where they're not blotted out either by what I think they're going to be blotted out by next week to some extent by the running mate tour. and then by the convention. So what can they do that week? Would you say what could be on their to-do list for that week?
Look, I think the more like they tried to send JD to the border, Trump is the elephant in the room. They're going to focus on Trump. I think the more coordinated events on issues that they can do with Trump. He's got a rally in Georgia. That's not what I would say is actually, I mean, they need to go do stuff that's disruptive to the news cycle. Another visit to the border. They need to bring all the members of Congress down there. They need to do things that the media can't ignore. And so I would find some immigration, economic, fentanyl, et cetera, type of things that they can go after them on that are aligned with the top issues that voters care about. But big coordinated events with a lot of people. So it's not just Trump. It's not just JD. I would get the whole team together and make it unignorable.
Yeah. I mean, I think if we're talking a real to-do list for Trump, it is to get 10 years younger, stop saying racist things, and figure out what your message is, which is very difficult. But I agree to Sean's point. I mean, they would have to, I think some disruptive event beyond a rally is helpful. But look, I think it is unavoidable that Harris will dominate the next week. I think it'll be, I'm curious to see if the VP candidate, if and when sits for an interview, because I think that does draw a little pressure to
Look, I think last night's tarmac thing that it's not going to get a ton of attention was proof as to why the Harris campaign is operating the way it is and why the Trump campaign is savoring an interview or an off-scripted event. It was not disastrous by any means, but it was that word salad type thing that everyone wants to attack her on. My point is, I think that this next 2 weeks, the lull, it's harder for her to get away with not everything being on a teleprompter. And those are the moments that everybody on at least my side is hoping for.
Right. All right. Two money things impacting the campaign. Most of you probably already saw the Harris campaign raised a ridiculous amount of money in July off the strength of the end of the month and or June into July. And the job numbers were lower than expected. So obviously, to the extent they follow what Sean's saying and they talk more about the economy, that obviously gives them a little bit of a push there. All right. Come on in. Helen, tell us where you are today and who you're supporting in the presidential race, if you know, and ask away or comment and unmute first.
Hi.
Go ahead, Helen.
Hi. So I'm in Edwards, Colorado, which is down the road from Vail. I'm actually in the district that Lauren Boebert represents, and I'm really glad to see her go.
So you're a Trump voter.
Yeah. I'm fiscally conservative and socially liberal, although not overly progressive. Definitely going to vote for Harris, would have voted for Biden, and I'm glad to see that Biden's out. I have no problem with how this all occurred, although I do wish that Biden just wouldn't have even chosen to run, so that there could have been a primary process to determine who the candidate should have been. But I am absolutely thrilled that Kamala is in place. Yeah. You previously described that there are some folks that would literally get depressed if Trump were to be in office again, and I'm one of those folks. I actually wanted to go back to a discussion that happened briefly on yesterday afternoon's call regarding the Olympic boxers. Mm-hmm. And the person that spoke, as well as a lot of the headlines, including Trump's tweet and other tweets, talked about these being male participating in a battle against females. These were not transgender athletes. These athletes were intersex athletes, which are athletes that did not develop biologically along just nice male-female lines. And this has been a very problematic biological issue for sports to deal with, including the Olympics. The Olympics has been dealing this for years to deciding what to do about it. But basically, you have what this means is that you have people, for example, that externally they have the genitalia of a woman, yet internally they have the biology of a guy. And there have been cases where there are athletes that don't even know that that is what's been going on with them until they get chromosomes. So what the point of this being My concern with a lot of the election of what's going on is misinformation.
Yeah.
And people not trying to understand the facts. They're just sharing this information. And that's one of the reasons I hate President Trump is because he constantly lies. And then people are making voting decisions based upon false information.
Yeah, Helen, it's a great point. I want to comment on it, but did you also have a question or you just want to make that statement?
I just wanted to make that comment.
Okay, thank you. So I failed yesterday because I didn't know of anything about this. I confess I'm not the biggest Olympics fan in the world, but because we're in the midst of a pretty intense news period, I didn't know anything about what was brought up. I let the conversation go. I probably shouldn't have. So I made a mistake. But I also think that what people should understand about this platform is it's important to hear all voices, right? And we know a lot of voices in America are voices now that either believe or spread disinformation and false things, right? So one of the reasons two-way exists is to have the difficult conversation to say, all right, you think the election was stolen? What do you mean by that? Or you think we shouldn't have a discussion about the origins of COVID? Or you think that the Georgia election law was intended to disenfranchise people? It's lots of misinformation. If I say it's on both sides, people are going to tell me it's only on one side. It's not. I'm not going to qualify how much there is. But you're absolutely right, Helen. I failed yesterday. You presented the facts as I now believe to be true based on the other people contacting me. But I appreciate you weighing in, and I'm glad you raised it because it allows me to correct the record and own up to my failings. Thank you. Tim and then Sean, what do you guys think of this specific case? Do you want to comment on that or of the question of misinformation and what we can all do about it?
Helen, have you ever voted for a Republican before? I know you said you never voted for Trump.
I may have years ago. I will tell you, I did vote for Ross Perot.
Okay. All right.
And actually, I would be open to voting for a Republican if I thought the Democratic candidate was just way progressive. And if the Republican was what would be a traditional kind of old style conservative Republican, I certainly would consider it.
Yep. I mean, all I will say on this issue in particular is I saw JD Vance engaging on this yesterday on Twitter. I saw a bunch of Republicans, conservatives engaging with it on Twitter without knowing the facts, and it's inflammatory. And it's another thing where I just don't know why they are chasing this issue.
So I let me weigh in on a couple of things. One, I wasn't privy to the call yesterday, so I complete ignorance on that. Two, I will say the only thing, the issue as Helen has described, I'm not well versed at all. Like I don't understand what I have seen what I've seen online. I'm not watching the Olympics either. So the only coverage I get is what I'm seeing online, and admittedly from my side, mostly. Okay. That being said, you look at the people who have weighed in on this issues, Jillian Michaels, J.K. Rowling. This is not just some right-wing manufactured thing. The reason I became aware of the issue is more because of them than anyone else, right? I didn't even know that JD or Trump had weighed in on it as much as them. That being said, there are two things at play here. One is the issue that Helen raises. I'm not well versed on it. I'm not really, to be honest, sure that a political call is the appropriate venue for us to be discussing the policy that exists. The goal, as far as I see, is it a valid political issue that both sides will recognize? From what I've seen, the people who are weighing in on this, if I had a candidate right now, I'd recommend they weigh in on it. The narrative is that a man beat up a woman. That is the one thing about politics, Helen, is perception rules. And right now, that's what's happening. That's what I saw. And I didn't see it through political lenses. As I mentioned, it was sort of outside people. Jillian Michaels is no right-wing nut job, right? She is a cultural fitness, gay influencer, lifestyle person, right? When you see someone like that weigh in on the travesty that exists, I would say, hey, we should capitalize on this. I look at this completely as a political issue right now, 90-something days out from the election. And so the question is it a discussion worth having? As I've said to everyone before on other issues, Mark's waited, if you're explaining, you're losing. And right now, this issue, as far as most people are seeing it, is what is being explained to them as a biological man beating up on a woman. Okay.
Yeah, I say with respect, Sean, I couldn't disagree with you more. We need to do a whole two-way episode about this. The political people, Helen, are going to manipulate this stuff. What I'd urge consumers to do is don't get angry. Don't have your reflex be to get angry.
But Mark,
Just
I
try
would
to
argue that,
evaluate
but
things.
hold on,
But Sean,
get.
Sean, you're saying we should just manipulate it because we're near an election.
No.
matter what the
I'm
facts.
not. I didn't. Mark, don't put words in my mouth. I didn't say we should manipulate. I'm trying to make sure that the people who are watching understand the context. It's like saying, I'm against balancing the budget, because the Biden Harris wants everyone to die because they have an open border. You would call that misinformation, right? But both sides are manipulating a policy issue. And that's what I'm trying to say is happening in politics.
But I'm sure you wouldn't endorse what people are doing, which is they're inflaming the matter with false information.
And
What I'm trying to do is make sure that people understand the context, which is it's not just a bunch of right-wing people that are weaponizing an issue. It is outside people, J.K. Rowling, Jillian Michaels, who are saying this is a problem. You have the woman herself who is saying that the comments that she's putting out and people reacting to this. This is not like it was weaponized by the Trump campaign.
But it is.
Sort of was. All right, we got to move on. Helen,
Awesome.
Helen, come back when we do a whole episode on this. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks.
All right, Sandra, tell me which it is. Tell us how to pronounce your name. Tell us where you're calling from. Tell us who you're voting for, and tell us what you want to say or ask.
Yes, I'm calling from Germany. I'm going to be voting for Trump. I'll make a couple of statements to what Mr. Spicer just said. I do believe it's a big theme right now and politically very, very important in the cultural war that we're having. I'm the representative of women's rights in the university hospital where I work at. And these are discussions that we're having in terms of fairness.
Sorry, you need to unmute again. I apologize.
We just lost it.
It's not a transgender, but this man in this boxing competition had XY chromosomes. So we can discuss it forever. But, it's about protecting the rights of everybody. And as a woman, I want to protect the rights of the sex that I think is at a disadvantage. And that was clearly the Italian boxer. And I think that's what people are getting very excited about.
Sandra, do you have a question? Just, we want to get a bunch of folks
yes,
in.
I have a question. I feel that the Black vote is not really being taken advantage of. Yesterday morning, there was the theme was this appearance of Trump in front of the National Journalists Association, the Black Journalists Association, and I felt there was a lot of uproar from the media or people that were there yesterday on your two-way.
Yeah.
But when I listen to Black influencers who have sometimes 1 million following, the major impression I got is that they felt that this journalist from ABC was very rude. They praised Trump.
Sandra, I got it. Sandra, I apologize for interrupting. Got to stop you because I want to stay on the topic we're on and that you raised initially, just because we're going to be short of time. So I appreciate you joining. I'm going to bring Megan in. Stay with us. Jump back in if you wish. Okay. Thank you. Megan McCain wants to comment, I believe, on topic that Sandra raised and was raised before as well. Megan.
There we go. Can you guys hear me?
Yes,
I was to talk today. All the stuff about women in sports and biological women in sports is something that is like one of the most culturally hot button issues I can honestly say with like women around my age and women with young kids. And I want to emphasize that like I am a ally of the LGBT community. I was like a very early marriage equality advocate. I have compassion with everyone in this situation. But as the guest just said in the last segment, the athlete has XY chromosomes and did not pass the testosterone test. And the politics of it, as Sean was saying, is that you have a Democrat Party, and I've actually been interested how Vice President Harris is going to handle this, who in front of Congress cannot define what a woman is. These are big issues. And I have 2 young daughters, and there is a volleyball player who was just recently paralyzed because a transgender athlete hit her with a ball, and she's very injured. It's getting a lot of attention in these kind of circles. Riley Gaines has a huge cult following. This is a very big issue issue that a lot of people want to ignore because they're very delicate and uncomfortable conversations. But for me, it has become more and more significant as we see, like, I'm a hyper feminist, like people would maybe even call me turfy. Women's spaces are sacred and they're being encroached in different places. I do not want to send my daughter into a locker room where she could possibly, like see someone with biological parts that aren't theirs in that place. And this, whatever you feel about it, this is a big, big issue that has really blown up in the past, I would say, like 2 or 3 years. And I don't blame people on both sides for jumping in on that, as Sean said, because this is going to be a giant issue. This isn't going away. Women.
I agree. Just want people to jump in. I just want people to jump in with facts.
Go ahead.
Can I just very quickly? Look. So just from the other side, I just want to say the perspective here, I think, is you were talking about a very small portion of the population, and I think for the LGBTQ community in particular, to see one letter focused on there that is very vulnerable, in particular when they are younger. I think that is the impulse from liberals to defend, is because we want to protect the marginalized, we want to defend fairness. And I think in particular when people are younger, for example, if there is someone who is deciding their gender identity or transitioning, right, and they also want to play sports, they also want to play like basketball or baseball that aligns with their gender identity, that their big question in life at that point is probably not like, where can I do better on a team, right? If I transition, can I play better baseball? Can I play better basketball? I think that perspective sometimes gets lost, that like the bigger question here that liberals, I think, are trying to be fair about and trying to defend people over is a very core question of fairness. And I understand, Megan, what you're saying. It's also you're couching this fairness as well.
I agree. I mean, look, I don't want any kid to be bullied or hurt, I'm very cognizant of that argument and that side as well. But I also don't want girls to have opportunities taken away, which is what's happening. And if you are, again, I'm friends with Riley Gaines. There are athletes that did not make it to the Olympics because of Leah Thomas. That is and again, almost every room I go into, no offense, Mark, is highly male dominated. I'm almost always the only woman in every room. I am very cognizant at almost 40 that we just, as a feminist, like, we are not making the kind of waves I thought we would have done. And then to see, again, like, women being put in physical spaces where the physicality of someone who was born a biological male or hasn't done the amount of hormones necessary. I don't even understand why this boxer was allowed, given that they failed their test to be there. And again, you can agree with me, disagree with me. My feelings on this have evolved a lot over time because of personal experiences. And I just think no matter what, this is definitely going to be a debate issue. This is going to be an issue that politicians all the way around. And like I said, what radicalized me was seeing Democrats and Supreme Court justices saying you can't even define what a woman is. Like, that in and of itself is erasure of biological women. And again, some people are going to be more quiet about it. I was really scared to talk about this publicly for a really long time. And my personality, just after a certain point, I was like, whatever. And the moment I started talking about it, just in my world, my audience was like, thank you for finally addressing this. And all I'm saying is the politics election part of it, this is going to be a major issue going forward, particularly when we're talking about giving hormones to kids under the age of 16. That's all. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful morning.
Sean, hold on 1 second. I'm going to let you get in, but we've already gone a little bit over. Warning the affiliates, we're going to go over it by a bit more. And after Sean responds, I want to get Janet, John, Blaine, and Jen all a chance to talk briefly as we conclude. So Sean, and then we'll bring the others in.
Let me summarize my previous point in the most succinct way. There's a difference between the policy issues that we're kind of discussing and the political power of this issue that Megan just articulated perfectly. And the bottom line is, on this issue, I would rather be our side than their side. And again, we can argue the policy merits all day long. Politics comes down to what issues sell more and bring more people to your side or dissuade another side. If the Trump campaign was smart and actually could articulate a position and get women out in front to talk about this the way that Megan just did, it would be a winner. There is a difference, again, between, I don't want anyone to misunderstand, there's a difference between the policy and how far it might go and the harm you could do. The reality is, politically, this is a winner. And I would say that we should take this all day long to the bank.
Okay, we got to move on from this unless our 4 final speakers want to talk about it. Blaine and Jen are Trump voters. Jen, are you a Trump voter or Biden, Harris voter or something else?
I'm a
Harris voter.
Harris. And John?
Undecided.
Undecided. All right. Jana, John, Blaine, Jen, in that order. Just say or ask what you want to do. And we're going to try to do this real quick, just to, that you all have your say here. Jana first.
I think I have a really important question, and I wish I had
Yeah.
asked it earlier.
Yeah.
What do you all think will happen if Trump loses the election? By the way, I'm a lifelong Republican, but never Trumper. What do you think will happen?
I mean, like, policy-wise or politically?
Politically, in the days following the election?
I think unless there's obvious evidence of not fraud, but mistakes in the process, I think he'll concede that he lost and disappear from the political scene.
Do you think there were obvious things about it last time, though?
There were way too many changes made based on COVID that should have been done more clearly and more fairly, but that doesn't mean the election was stolen, and those were the rules, and that's our system works. But that's all that happened last time. But I think this time will be different because I think there'll be more preparation to understand. I don't think there'll be the same patience for it. That's my
I
hope.
hope you're right. Are you not hearing
so.
are you not hearing the claims that he has all these people in place in the swing states that are agreeing not to certify?
He does, but I think the election administrators will step up to this and do it
Okay.
in a way this time. I may be wrong, and look, we'll be covering here on two-way quite a bit because this format is made for trying to bring the country together to not have the kind of indecision and claims last time. But that's what I think. Thank you, Jen. Please come back. Please come back to talk more about it. John, where do you live? Undecided.
I would just say at some point in the future we can talk about the consent decree and why this all matters. But I think it's important.
It is. John, where do you live? Why are you undecided? What do you want to say?
So I live in New York. I wouldn't say I'm a never Trumper, but I'm kind of a never Trumper. I wanted to circle back around to the original conversation around what the Republicans should do with the dead space. And I think what the Republicans should do, and I'm amazed that they haven't done, is actually define Kamala Harris. Like I'm not as high information as a lot of the folks on the call, but I'm more engaged in probably 80% of the people that I know. And I don't know Kamala Harris very well. I think, I remember her as a Senate case, kind of a nondescript Senate member, and during her 2020 primary run, what I remember about her is that she kind of got run off because she was too far.
John, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we're going over. I take your point that you're right. There needs to be more about her, and hopefully the Trump people can fill that in. Is that your point?
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay, John, thank you, and please come back. And again, I'm sorry to cut you off. Blaine, real quick, just like a sentence, please, whatever you want to say.
Yeah, just thought two things that stood out from this call. I think that Trump's campaign should clip what Tim said about how the Democrats since 2016 have moved away from, they're less about their values and more about electability. That goes right in to, you don't know who Kamala Harris is, you don't know what she stands for, and I think that's the direction they're going. And then now the dead space, the job numbers came out today. We should all root for America to have great job numbers and all root to have great unemployment, but the unemployment has went up every month from February till now. That is a recession indicator, not just an inflation indicator. So you can no longer say Bidenomics is working.
Thank you, Blaine. I hear that a lot from folks in business. We'll see.
If my ad debut is in a Trump ad, I mean, like, I'm flattered, honestly. Put me in there.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Blaine. Have a great day. Jen, real quick, close us up.
I just had a question that what happens if Shapiro outshines Harris?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think they'll be calibrating that carefully to be a buddy picture in the team, and they'll do everything they can to make sure it doesn't get to that tipping point. But I do think he's a super impressive guy. I think there'll be people who wonder about that, but I'll make sure that she's in charge.
He can talk off the cuff, you know.
Yeah. I agree. All right. Thank you. Thank you for being brief. Thanks, everybody. Again, I'm sorry I had to cut folks off, but we do want to try to get in a lot of voices. And I just have to make a guess about where the best place to go is. I may be back later today. The three of us will be back Monday morning, same bad time, same bad channel, 9:00 Eastern. I think we'll have a running mate to talk about and a whole lot more. So appreciate you joining. If I don't see you later today, I'll see everybody. We'll see everybody Monday morning. Have a great day.